welcome to Good Game, the show for gamers by gamers. I'm Hex.
And I'm Barjo. We're diving into the grab bag of new game offerings this week, including Blur, a power-up-infused arcade racer.
Jolly Rover is the point-and-click adventure game along the lines of Monkey Island. It's the result of the hard work of one Australian indie developer. We look at the game and talk to the man.
Plus, we'll be slicing some fruit ninja style.
But first, can you guess the game for this week?
Too much pressure.
What?
Answer at the end of the show. News time, Hex.
Yeah.
Where are you going?
This way, isn't
That's
it?
not the way. You know full and well where the newsroom is. That's right. No more shenanigans.
Good game.
According to research by Japan's Computer Entertainment Suppliers Association, piracy on the DS and PSP has cost the global games industry the equivalent of a whopping $51 billion over the course of 5 years. The research was conducted by studying the downloads of top-selling games from over 100 different piracy websites. Peer-to-peer networks were not included, which means that the loss to the market could actually be much higher. The US was the busiest region for piracy, followed by Japan and then China. The Adobe Corporation has issued a worldwide security warning about Flash, the popular game and animation software platform. This vulnerability exists in all existing versions of the software, as well as version 9 of Adobe Acrobat and Adobe Reader. There have already been documented cases of hackers taking advantage of this exploit to remotely take control of PCs. As a workaround, Adobe has advised the public to uninstall Flash and install the latest release of the software instead. Meanwhile, Square Enix has warned its customers of a potential security breach in the online game of Final Fantasy XI. Hackers have reportedly stolen the customer details of an undisclosed number of the MMO's subscribers. The Japanese publisher has rushed to assure users of the 8-year-old game that their credit card details have not been compromised and that they are taking this intrusion very seriously indeed. Anyone still playing Final Fantasy XI may wish to change their passwords anyway just to be on the safe side. EA is in hot water over its upcoming sports game EA Sports Active 2.0. An exercise website called the Active Network have filed a lawsuit against the publishing giant, claiming that it and it alone has the right to use the word active in relation to all sports-related IT products, including fitness chat rooms and electronic training schedules. The Active Network is seeking over $90,000 in court fees and damages.
Good game.
What a glorious day for sailing, eh, lads? Eee! I'll never join your crew. Ah! Sir, Governor De Silva, sir. Ooh.
Move out, bitches!
What was that monkey doing?
Jolly Rover is a new point-and-click adventure game from Australian indie developer Brawsome for the PC and Mac.
You play as Gaius James Rover, a dapper sausage dog with some dead daddy issues, who is the inspired hero of this swashbuckling tale of pirates, exotic cannibalistic tribes, and evil governors.
The gameplay should be familiar to anyone who's played a point-and-click adventure game, particularly the Monkey Island series. It's easy to jump in and guide your character across the 2D landscape with a one-click interface. You interact with other characters via conversation options and pick up items which slot easily into your inventory.
The beauty of this game is that it incorporates a whole bunch of nifty tools that make it less frustrating than older point-and-click adventure games. Pressing down spacebar during scenes will highlight all the areas and items you can interact with. Once you've already interacted with a character or item, the title turns white from the original blue, which saves you hours of checking through items and characters again if you missed anything. And you can also specify how fast you want Gaius to walk.
I just found them such life-saving options, Badge. You know, if you had to go back through a specific scene, it just meant less repetition, and less repetition generally means more enjoyment. I have to say one of the best features of the game, though, had to be the in-game hint system, which manifests itself through a parrot, Juan Leon.
Juan.
Pardon?
Juan Leon.
Okay, Juan.
You can pick up Juan at any time, click on yourself and ask him for any number of tips, from what your quest is at the moment to how to complete specific tasks. Of course, further hints usually require feeding Juan crackers, which you need to progressively collect throughout the game.
Cracker, cracker.
Although hardcore point-and-clickers don't really need Juan's input, for mere mortals he can be invaluable. Nothing in Jolly Rover is exceptionally hard, but if you ever do get stuck in point-and-click delirium, Juan can mean the difference between hitting your head on a keyboard or moving on.
The mini-games and problem-solving tasks here include requisite ones like making recipes by collecting ingredients that you'll find throughout the game. Also, the use of a unique set of voodoo chants become a significant part of getting through various obstacles and situations.
I thought the chants added a nice layer of depth and difficulty. I even had to use a pen and paper to keep track of which ones I needed to use. The rendered scene graphics here are simple but incredibly pleasing to the eye and evokes a sense of those picture books you read as a kid. The characters aren't animated with loads of pizzazz, but you feel it's adequate for a game like this.
Yeah, I agree, Badge. You get such a feeling of nostalgia when you come across these graphics, but what really surprised me was the level of detail in the voice acting.
Quit your lollygagging, get aloft and free the yardarm!
What language is that?
What kind of pirate are you?
Well, I'm more of a clown.
With so many bigger games getting the voice acting so wrong, it's nice to see they've gone for a low-keyed approach, but it really works for the game and the characters.
Oiled and ready for action.
Although I did find the soundscapes a bit lacking in depth, the soundtrack itself was soothing and pleasant enough.
The game follows a linear path and you can only complete one quest at any given time. It's about 6 hours here, provided you don't rush through it, and heck, the story is a bit cliche, but I quite like the script, you know, there's some nice witty moments there and a lot of puns and gags to keep you happy.
I'd say this is well fortified, but then I'd need to be punished.
Collecting crackers, pieces of pirate flags, and completing quests will unlock a section of B-side music tracks and character bios and some concept art as well, which is great. Once the entire game is finished, you unlock an audio commentary by Andrew Goulding, the developer,
I thought it would be funny to put a bunch of objects in a room.
along with audition excerpts from the voiceover artists.
No, I can't have you stumbling about, getting in the way of the crew.
Bits and pieces that really made me want to play through the game again. Final thoughts?
Oh, look, I don't think it breaks any new ground, but it's a nice short and sweet experience. And heck, so often point-and-click adventures become frustrating if the story or the characters aren't engaging enough to pull you through it. But I was amused the whole way through this. I had a good time. I'm giving it 8 out of 10 rubber chickens.
Yeah, I thought it was a really warm game and quite charming.
I miss my balls.
I mean, you're not going to be overly challenged by the story or the gameplay, but there were some really nice moments here. It's 7.5 from me.
We went and caught up with Australian developer Andrew Goulding and kicked things off by asking him how long it took him to develop Jolly Rover.
Well, the actual game has been in development for about 10 months now. But before that, there was probably about 2 weeks developing a prototype, and before that, about a month just putting a game design document together. And I guess before that, it's just been in my heart for about 18 years, since I was 12, really. 2 studios that I had a lot of respect for were Sierra and LucasArts. So anything that came out from them, you know, around the time of the early 90s was just a real source of inspiration for me. And in particular, the comedic adventures such as Monkey Island, Dave the Tentacle, Sam and Max, the Space Quest and Heroes Quest series. They have definitely strong influences in Jolly Rover.
Ooh, you. I knew. Just joined.
When the royalties for Jolly Rover start rolling in, I'm definitely going to make another one. I think there's definitely a sequel on the cards. We've got a lot of cool ideas. And if it does really well, there's a more obscure title that I want to work on. But if it doesn't do as well, I'll look at something more mainstream, but not vampires.
Good game.
The pointy teeth, pale skin, unnerving glare. No, we're not profiling Barjo. We are in fact talking about the Lord of the Undead, the Prince of Darkness, the vampire. Vampires in games have been cast as boss characters, anti-heroes, the misunderstood and the mysterious, and are probably second only to zombies when it comes to most popular undead video game creations. The love affair with all things vampiric kicked off in true literary style with a 1981 text adventure based on Bram Stoker's Dracula called The Count. As was typical for text-based games, solutions were bafflingly obscure. You'd be bitten by a vampire within seconds of playing unless you'd figured out a way to ward off the bloodsucker. In Konami's Castlevania series on the NES in 1987, players took the role of vampire hunter Simon Belmont with his vamp-slashing holy whip. You traversed Dracula's castle, thrashing countless ghoulies until finally going toe-to-toe with Drac himself. But being the demonic undead that he is, Dracula would rise again for years of side-scrolling sequels, the best of which is undoubtedly Castlevania Symphony of the Night on PlayStation. Gaming in the 90s brought us a diverse range of vamps. The legacy of Kane series kicking off on PlayStation with Blood Omen introduced us to the tortured soul of Kane, a vampire who sought a cure for his demonic curse and revenge on his murderers. Set in the fantasy world of Nosgoth, the game explored the concept of fate versus free will, as Kane came to terms with being afflicted with vampirism and what he'd have to become to survive. The sequel, Soul Reaver, introduced the equally infamous Raziel, a former vampire turned wraith who would end up having to face his ancestor Kane in battle at the end of the game for a bit of fang-on-fang action. But the hemoglobin-hungry hordes wouldn't always be depicted as villainous vein poppers. The quirky fighting game Darkstalkers, known as Vampire the Night Warriors in Japan, brought us a whole roster of stylized monsters, some who've become surprisingly popular beyond the game itself. That green-haired succubus Morrigan seems to pop up everywhere. The game's main toothy terror was Dmitry Maximov, a Romanian recluse who enjoys feasting on the blood of innocents as well as a quarter-circle punch chaos flair. If you've always wanted to see how a vampire fares against a werewolf, give the Street Fighter-style gameplay of Darkstalkers a taste. Channeling the humorous point-and-click puzzling of games like Sam and Max, A Vampire Story was an adventure game that gave us the likeable Mona, a young opera singer resigned to a life of vampirism in the dank halls of Castle Warg in Draxylvania.
It's not blood, it's just, well,
a real thick and salty tasting Merlot with a little iron aftertaste? Is that what that is?
With her smart-ass sidekick Froderick the Bat at her side, Mona guided us through an array of perplexing puzzles, sometimes requiring the use of her bat form to get up to high places, with an endless stream of vampire gags.
What's wrong, Mona? The door's open. What are you waiting for? Head on in.
I can't! For some reason, I can't cross the threshold of the doorway.
I wonder if this has anything to do with the fact that you are currently life-challenged.
Now, the world of B-grade horror isn't unique to low-budget cinema. Games have brought us plenty of cheesy vampire schlock too. The game Blood Rain, with its half-human, half-vampire anti-heroine, was tacky enough to inspire Uwe Boll to bring it to the silver screen. With 2 arm-length blades with which to decapitate any demon of darkness to cross her path, Blood Rain's acrobatic action somehow spawned a sequel that put the ginger vamp up against her vampire lord of a father. Blood Rain not only let you play a vampire, but kill them too. I think that's what you call a win-win situation.
Sir, is the Nightwalker population really expected to exceed that of humans in 908 days?
That's what happens when you let pencil pushers run a country.
The award for most hopelessly awful vampire game to ever grace the insides of our home consoles goes to the dull as dishwater Vampire Rain. You play a special forces operative who must brave the nighttime streets of Los Angeles in order to root out the vampires posing as humans. The game relied heavily on stealth, with vampires powerful enough to kill you in a couple of hits. It was a steaming pile of frustration as the fanged fiends continuously dispatched you to a depressing game over screen. A far superior vampire killing game came in the form of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Decent beat-em-up mechanics and the satisfaction of staking those creeps through the heart made this relatively repetitive game a sheer dusting delight. Having a couple of Buffy novelists pen the game's storyline certainly helped to give this game an authentic edge for those hard-to-please Joss Whedon fans.
Hey, what do you think this is? A library?
Now, if you're looking for a game to dunk you in headfirst into vampire lore, you simply cannot go past Troika Studios' Vampire: The Masquerade Bloodlines, a superb RPG based on the White Wolf pen and paper game. Though it launched with a plethora of glitches and bugs, Bloodlines still captivated us with a witty script and well-formed characters.
I can feel a draft on my insides.
That brought to life each of the Camarilla vampire clans. The story had multiple endings and plot twists, depending on the type of vampire you chose to roleplay, whether it be a violent psychopath or a silver-tongued bewitcher. This was true vampire role-playing far beyond simply slaughtering your victims to quench your undying thirst, though you got to do a lot of that too. So forget those reruns of True Blood and fling those copies of Twilight in the bin. If you want a little vampire action, there are clearly tons of video games out there to sink your teeth into. Badge, what do ninjas hate?
Well, pirates, obviously.
Wrong! They hate fruit. Brought to us by our very own Half Brick Studios, Fruit Ninja is another one of those oh-so-simple yet oh-so-addictive games for the iPhone and iTouch, where there's no end in sight, just a high score to chase.
You swipe your finger across the screen to act as a sword, which slices through fruit that's thrown up at you. There are 2 game modes here. In classic mode, every time you miss a piece of fruit, you lose a life, and you've only got 3. But swipe 100 and you get an extra life. There's also bombs thrown up at you, and if you swipe one of those, it's game over.
And then there's Zen mode, which takes away the bombs and lives but gives you 90 seconds to slice as many fruit as you can. And here's where a bit of strategy comes in, because you can get a fairly high score from just spamming your finger all over the screen, but to get the really competitive scores, you need to earn combos by slicing anything more than 3 fruit at once. Because when you do this, you get twice as many points. So you get a 3 fruit combo and you get 6 points, 4 and you get 8. You get the idea. And this forces you to consider each swipe more carefully. I mean, do you just slice what's there or hold out and try for a combo but risk losing that one bit of fruit? It's a great bit of risk versus reward.
Yeah, Hex, I can see the appeal of these kind of games. You know, you pick them up and you try and beat your previous score, then you put them down again, just something to do. But I just found chopping fruit so dull.
Well, fair enough. I thought this game was a great use of the iTouch's functionality, and it's just so much fun to unleash your inner ninja on all of that fruit. And sometimes I just want something fast and fun that I can play while waiting for a bus, and this game really delivers on that, and it's so addictive. I had a great time with it. I'm giving it 8.5.
I really couldn't get into this one. I bought so many of these little games. I feel like I've been burned, you know? I play them for 5 minutes and then I never want to play them again. And maybe it's just the setting. I like a score chase game as much as the next person, just not with fruit. I'm giving it 5 out of 10.
But you would have played it if it was called Fruit Pirate.
10 out of 10.
That doesn't exist. You can't score a game that doesn't exist.
I don't need it to exist or play it.
It's hardly subjective.
I don't make the rules. Just enforce them. Now it's time for our review of Blur.
Blur.
Blur. Blur is a weird hybrid of Mario Kart, Wipeout and Burnout, but before we get too much further into the review, we've had tons of people of late ask us on the forums, Facebook and Twitter about our rating system.
Well, 4 people did.
Tons, so we thought we'd try and shed some light on just how we do things. Hex, reveal it. Yeah.
One way to score a game is to break it down into categories. I mean, it's not an exact science, but it helps us to form an overall opinion of the game. So, Badge, why don't we start with the graphics and general presentation?
All right, whiteboard marking me, Hex.
Nope. Sorry. Blur is brought to us by Bizarre Creations, the dev team behind Project Gotham Racing and, of course, Geometry Wars. You can even see a bit of the Geometry Wars DNA in the presentation with all those dazzling lighting effects that flash in your face constantly.
Yeah, how many trophy and achievement things do we need? They just keep sliding in and flashing at your face throughout the start of the game especially, and it's quite distracting.
Well, it's a good-looking racer anyhow, even if some of the tracks are lacking in inspiration a bit. Some of the static lighting effects, like the car's front and rear lights, were a little overdone too, but all the power-up effects were quite spectacular.
So the presentation is good, the cars and the visuals are all very polished, so I think I'm going to give it 8.5. I see we're in agreement.
Well, for now, Blur is all about that combative racing, you know, zipping around and picking up power-ups to give you different abilities. A shunt is your red shell that'll home in on a target ahead of you. A shock will throw down EMP lasers at the front of the race to let you catch up. A shield will protect you for a limited time. Repair kits repair your car, obviously. And then there's missiles and an AoE slam.
Some of these can be shot backwards and some counter others, so it can be quite exciting trying to scramble to get something which can counter that giant fireball of death coming towards you in your rearview mirror. There weren't that many power-ups, but I think there were enough and they got the balance just right.
I did find that the reset when you spin out was a bit too punishing though.
Yeah, that sets you way back.
But the game does auto-correct your vehicle after a jump or if you take a hit, which is great to get you back on track. It's a subtle feature, but definitely a welcome one. You can store up to 3 power-ups at a time, and hanging on to the right one will be essential to snatching a win. Even your first race on normal difficulty requires on-the-fly planning, not just racing skill. A shield is paramount if you're in first place, and if you're in a vehicle that doesn't have much durability. You know, I liked the strategy here, Barjo, even if it is all familiar stuff.
As you progress through the single-player campaign, you'll be asked to complete a bunch of requirements per race series, and if you do this, you'll have a one-on-one race with a chance to win someone's car and also a mod, and these mods improve the power-up effects too. But single player is really unforgiving and tedious, and I found that towards the end of the campaign I was just going back and repeating races to get enough lights to progress through, but the game wasn't quite fun enough for me to do that.
Yeah, the AI spams abilities like there's a monkey behind the wheel, so online is really the only way to play this game, I reckon, and we actually found the online community to be quite nice for a change. Oh, and there's 4-player split screen.
That was a nice surprise. Developer Bizarre Creations really got online right. It's truly a unique experience, and it does something that every multiplayer game should do. Region locking. You can set it by your own country, or just prefer in your own country, or anywhere, whatever.
Yeah, 20 cars battling it out with crazy power-ups was a hectic sight. And with the smaller matches we played, we had no issue playing with people from the other side of the planet, but those matches where we had like 20 or more people were a bit dodgy, so it's probably best to stick to your own region for those ones.
There's plenty of ranks to work your way up in, and legendary stuff too, kind of like prestige mode on COD, but actually rewarding. A rank 3 can take on a rank 45 and win if you play your cards right. And as you gain wins or fans, better cars and more mod profiles will become available to you. Also, there's fun destruction derby modes and team battles, and later on hardcore racing, which has no power-ups at all.
Another thing Blur gets very right is how you share your progress in pictures. Now, I hate getting spammed with people's updates online about how they're progressing in a game, but the system they've integrated here is actually pretty great. You can take a photo at any time during the single player, or select an achievement or unlock, and with a few controller clicks spread it through Facebook, Twitter or MSN.
I hate achievement spam too, Hex, especially when they say things like, I can't get enough of these stickers, which Blur does, and I could get enough of these stickers. I never said that. But I wish this system was in other games because they've got it really, really slick here. I'd love to be in an RPG and show off my fat loots or something like that. So, what do you think, Hex? Online is pretty good.
Yeah, I agree.
What's left? Sound design!
Oh, yeah. Some of the sound effects of racing over dusty roads were a cheese grater to my ears, Barjo.
Yeah, and the music's not really much to speak of, and it left me feeling a bit cold, so...
Oh, you gave this... Oh, no.
No, I didn't. So I think it's time to tally the votes. Let's math. So the scores we've derived after all that actually don't represent how we feel about the game, because there is an X factor, a gut feeling that you need to take into account.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's how you felt about the whole experience from when you picked up the controller to when you put it down, whilst taking into account all the parts that worked and the parts that didn't, where it sits within the genre and the franchise if it has one, whilst also subjectively based against all the games that we've personally played ever.
So when you hear us give a conclusion and then a final score, that score isn't based on those last few words. It's based on analysis and feelings.
Oh, and out of rubber chickens.
Out of rubber chickens. So having said that, I'm giving Blur 8 out of 10 rubber chickens.
Well, I'm giving it 7.
Good game.
Did you guess the game for this week?
That was fast.
Thanks.
It was Fur Fighters for PC, PS2 and Dreamcast. This melange of furry animal violence played like a third-person shooter in huge sprawling levels. Not bad for one of Bizarre Creations' early creations.
Yes, well done if you got that one. And sadly, that brings us to the end of another show, but it will return next week at 8:30 p.m. on ABC2, but without me, because I'm heading off to Los Angeles for the biggest gaming convention on the planet, E3 2010.
To our posse of tweeters, thanks again for joining us this week. And don't forget, a higher quality version of our show is available for download on our website, and we're also available through the ABC's catch-up service, iView. We've also been invited to be guest programmers on Rage this week, and that starts over on ABC One on Saturday. So, Barjo, have you packed?
Yes.
Right, well, have a great time at E3, get lots of interviews for us, and play lots of games.
I will, thanks. Now, don't miss me too much.
I won't.
You can just a little bit. I know when you look over here and there's going to be an empty chair, you'll probably feel a bit, you know.
Well, the chair won't actually be empty because I've asked Andrew Hansen of Chaser fame to guest present the show with me.
Bindi?
Yeah, it's going to be amazing. He's a massive gamer. We've got heaps of great stuff lined up, including a monumental backwards compatible on Andrew's favourite developer, Rare.
Oh, well, have a good time without me.
Well, thanks, we will. Till next week, Hex out.
Bye.
Oh, of course we'll miss you. Get home safe and play lots of games.
I will.
Yay!